Hi, Ken.
Hey, Annette, how are you?
So I see my dear friend in the audience. I'm going to invite her to come up and join us. We shall see if Stella is awake and wants to come up. She's actually my LinkedIn Live guest next week. I'm so excited.
Yeah, very good. But
Hello,
you
my
say you hope,
friend. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
no, you said you hope she's awake. Stella, where are you calling in from?
Hi Annette, hi Ken. I'm in
Hi.
London at the moment, so it's 7 o'clock in the
Ah,
evening.
yes, it
Ah,
is late.
well, I was just telling Ken, Stella, this time slot and day seems to be pretty hit or miss for me lately, but I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there.
Well, I saw you pop up on my phone, so I thought I'd come in and check what's going on in here.
Well, actually, I'm waiting for a friend who moderates with me all the time. I don't know if you've met her or not. Her name is Mary Despe. She's a recruiter located in Hawaii. So I connected with her on Clubhouse, and she comes in most weeks and moderates with me. That's the best thing, Stella. Ken and I were just talking about how we enjoy being on Clubhouse, and for me it's all about the conversations and the people that I meet on Clubhouse that I can continue that relationship offline. Like you, people like you, Stella, and Ken as well.
Yeah, I mean it's really really great, and we've moderated in quite a few rooms and still do now
Yes.
with the LinkedIn rooms, and of course it's all about aligning with other coaches. And for me, it's about sharing good practice. So I'm all for, anything, any rooms that can help support job seekers or those looking to transition in their careers.
I appreciate that. I'm always happy to see you. And I picked this topic because people were talking, I don't know, a few weeks ago about the whole tell me about yourself. And so many job seekers go into interviews and they just that's the first question that most interviewers ask, maybe because they just don't know what else to ask or it's to build rapport, and people just start rambling. I started my job, my career. I used to listen to my husband talk like this when he was doing a job interview over the phone, and it's just the quickest way to put people to sleep, I think, is to just be rambling. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I guess I'll jump in on that. Annette, I definitely agree with that, and I've been a rambler myself, and sometimes it could get a little scary. Like I start rambling on and on and on, and then I'm like, I'm so far gone, I don't even remember what the question was. It actually happened in an interview, and that's a bad place to be in an interview. Um, but I do think too, people try to get. I think they'd make it more complicated than it is. I think people really want to know. Tell me about yourself, not your job history, your work history, but tell me about you. What are you all about? And as a candidate, you need to think about what you're going to tell that person that relates to the job you're interviewing for. So I think that's the first thing you need to do is figure out what's my focus going to be to answer that tell me about yourself question. And I think personal brand is one place to start for sure.
So I know you have advice, Stella, because you always do. Let's hear it.
I totally agree with Ken, but I also see this tell me about yourself questions from different angles and from different perspectives of interviewers asking that question. So the first sort of perspective is that tell me about yourself. It's literally I almost want to call it an icebreaker because sometimes that's what it is. The interviewer doesn't actually care to know about you in that way because for the most part they've got your CV or resume in front of them. So I'm pretty sure they know a bit about you already if they've actually gone through your CV or resume. So usually it's more like it's literally to get you settled into the real aspects of the interview, and two, to also get them settled into the interview. So that's one perspective. And another perspective is literally if it's a, if it's a case that they generally do know want to know about you, then they what and when they ask that question, then it's something really that you shouldn't, that isn't on your CV or your resume, is what you need to talk about. So literally you have about 60 to 90 seconds, so you don't end up rambling, as Ken says, because as you said, we've all gone through that, stage in interviews that you just keep on rambling, and like Ken mentioned earlier on, you just even forget what the actual question was. So again, the tell me about yourself question, really, to me, when I'm advising or when I'm delivering on employability skills training and interview skills training, is, the less time you spend on that particular topic about tell me about yourself, the better, because you're going to be talking about you using your experiences throughout the interview anyway. So it's a brief introduction. It's to, just to settle everybody in. And I always tell people, don't spend anything more than 60 to 90 seconds answering that question. So I hope that's answered that question, Annette.
It has. I actually heard someone I know, Kathy Robinson, who's a coach, and I think she's primarily sort of a job interview coach. And one of the things that she told me when I interviewed her, I had her on my live, I don't know, way last year, was that before going into a job interview, to prep for the tell me about yourself by choosing different things from your career that address different requirements of the position. So, what's your take on that, Stella?
I think yes, but at the same time, like I said, you know, you don't want to spend too much time doing that, spending that time doing that research on a tell me about question. I'd rather you really focus your attention and your prep into demonstrating the skills that you said you've got on your CV or resume. Um, those are going to be what value you can bring to the organization. So even, starting off telling me about yourself is, again, something that might not necessarily be on your CV, that might be a point of interest, but you can easily relate it to the information you've given on your CV or resume. There's nothing worse, like you said, on the topic about people putting interviewers to sleep, when somebody asks you, tell me about yourself, and the very first thing that comes out a lot of people is, my name is. Well, we already know who you are. My name is, and then for some bizarre reason, the next thing that always follows with that is, my name is, and I'm 29 or I'm 32 years old. We don't care. It's not something that is going to make you stand out from the crowd. And again, because so many people do it, it's the odd one person that will go in and really just, say something completely different, is what is going to make me remember you. Even if you don't do too well at the interview, is that first impression that you create by telling me something about yourself that is so out of the ordinary that I haven't heard nine people before you say, is what is going to actually, make you stand out from the crowd, is going to make those interviewers sit up to really want to engage with you. So you've got to play it in a way that I said that right at the beginning, you're walking in, because for the most part, that is one of the first questions that is being asked of you, for you to tell them a bit about yourself. Though, as I said, some people generally don't care. They just want to settle you into the interview, and they want to settle themselves in.
I love that, and that is similar to what Ken said, to share a little bit. So I haven't been in a job interview for a long time because I've had my own business for over a decade. But I'm wondering now what you both think. If I was sitting in a job interview and the interviewer said, well, tell me about yourself, you think I might want to start by saying something about, well, I'm really an advocate of dog rescue. I have a couple of pups at home, and then, move into, and that kind of, gets me excited to start every day or something. What do you think? Would that make an impression, or is that just too like out there? What do you think, Ken?
Excuse me. Well, I guess I agree with Stella in terms of, say something that the 9 or 10 people before you haven't said. I think that could be good if you're able to then tie it into why is that important maybe for the job. When I talk to clients who oftentimes they're immigrants and they say they don't really have much to say, what do I say? And I said, well, tell me about when you came here to America. Why did you come here? And they'll say, well, I came when I was 10 years old. I didn't speak English. I didn't know anybody. My mother was here, but she didn't speak English and we didn't know anybody. And then we talk about that. And to me, it has nothing directly to do with the job, but what an interesting story. And it tells about courage. It tells about, initiative. It tells about, learning and growing and being willing to take chances. So I think if you could connect that kind of opening, Annette, with what that would mean, how that contributes to you as a person, that would make you a great person for the job. I think that would be a great approach. That's my answer for now.
Go ahead, Stella. Answer my crazy question.
I love it. But again, for some, it might set them back. And I think Ken has really sort of given you that prompt because, again, you've got to tie in everything that you're saying back to, am I going to be the one? Am I going to be the one they want in their organization? So again, when you say something so out of the blue, does that tie in with the job? If you're going for a job where it's an animal rescue or it's some sort of animal based type job, that is absolutely perfect. But for me, a good example would be, COVID has completely changed the way I see, life, my life going, both professionally and personally. This is something that, has affected absolutely absolutely everyone everywhere. And it'll be amazing how you start off with talking about COVID, that the person actually interviewing you will actually be able to engage because they will see it from that, from their perspective and how they've been coping with COVID. So these are the kind of things that people need to think about. I draw people into conversations when, as you said, a bit like you, Annette, I haven't had like a formal interview in absolute years. But what I have done as an educator is attend a lot of interviews. So I can see the type of questions people ask. So I can then feed that back either to my clients or to my learners. And again, I'm one of those people that I'm so clever at, changing the focus and taking the focus away from me, that draws in the person who's interviewing me to do most of the talking. I just set it up in that way. So that's another way of getting getting away of, making it all about you in that sense. Draw them into the conversation. And before you know it, what should have been a 60 to 90-second question, you know, turns up into 10-15 minutes of conversation. And if it's going really quickly, it's working to your advantage. Because again, even through that one, question of tell me about yourself, you can already demonstrate certain skills. COVID is a big topic where you can talk about how you've had to communicate using Zoom. It's something you haven't used before. You can really manipulate that subject that works so much to your strengths, and then builds up a conversation with the person interviewing you. An interview is a two-way process. People going for interviews always think it's about them going in, listening to the question and answering the question, right? And it is in a way, but the more you can engage the interviewer, the better for you when you are interviewed, and the less nervous you then become, because now they're becoming very much part of the interview process.
Yeah, I love it. So we have a few people down in the room. Please do come up and join us on stage if you have a question or if you'd like to share something. We often learn from people who come into the room and share their experience of something that's worked for them. And I do love what you both said. And you know, I think so often people go into interviews and the biggest failing is that they don't prepare in advance. So they go in and they decide they're going to just wing it. And I think that's what gets a lot of people into trouble. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of, just memorize and rehearse. But I think it is important to, go over your talking points. So what would you say to clients, and I know, Ken, you're a coach, and Stella, you teach employability skills all the time. So how do you convince people that they need to prep for the job interview? Because I struggle with that.
Well, I think it's yeah. Sometimes I'll give an example of me where I did not practice and how it hurt me in the interview, and then also we do a lot of interview practice. And when they hear themselves or stumble over questions, I think it becomes pretty clear. And I explained to them it's better to do it with me in a safe place than it would be, on an interview. If I can make a couple other quick points though too, and that with your intro, and I think it does tie back to preparing. If you just said that off the top of your head, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm an animal lover. In fact, I have rescues. I have two rescues there. If you left it at that, there's not much to it. But if you said, and I guess maybe that's why my colleagues have always seen me as a great teammate, and they've always really liked working with me because I do look outward and I do look to see what I can do to make the world, or my world, a little bit of a better place. And so one way I do it is through animal rescue. The other way I do it is in the work I do on my job. I mean, that could be one approach. The other thing I was going to say is the reason why, too, it's so important, that tell me about yourself question, is because of something called the primacy recency effect. And that is that people remember most what they hear first and what they hear last. So you want to really start off with a bang. You're right, Stella. Don't start off with my name is so and so and I'm 29 years old. Start off with something that they're going to remember. And when you're leaving that interview, too, make sure you say something to the effect of, if there's one thing you take away from this interview, please remember that I'm a team player who looks out and sees how I can help beyond my job, or whatever that might be. So those are a couple of thoughts for me.
I love how you turned that around. You're quick on your feet, Ed. Ed, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of your buddy Ed, Ken. So I appreciate you thinking on your feet like that. You know who I mean? Your buddy Ken, your buddy Ed Sherman, right?
Samuel.
Samuel. See, I get the Ed Samuel with the Ken Sher, and I get the that just confuses me
I've been
there. So
called worse than that. That's okay.
oh, I appreciate that. It's such a thing. The idea of, again, the prepping in advance. Stella, how do you get your people in line, the people that you work with, to not rehearse but prep their responses in advance?
First thing I always say to people is most interviewers are experienced interviewers, for starters. So they can spot when you are coming in and you are coming in having memorized what it is you need to say, right? And again, people like me, we support people in terms of how to actually prep for an interview. So that's why I'm always careful, when I'm giving examples, when I'm telling them, giving them the tools. I always say, don't go and mimic what I'm telling you, because you'll get found out, more so when it's not natural to you. So, for example, I sort of role play in terms of how to use a glass of water to answer really difficult questions, for example. But the way I do it is going to be in a natural form. But when you see it, it looks like play acting. So I wouldn't encourage people to then go and mimic the way I've answered it using that glass of water. You've got to find a fine balance of having prepped for an interview, but you're not going in and it looks so rehearsed, and all you're coming out with all these buzzwords. And that's another thing with prepping for interviews. Carrying a bag full of buzzwords to interviews doesn't impress anybody. So these are the kind of things that you need to think about when you are prepping for an interview. It's very, very, it's almost difficult, and it's always easy for us to say it, but you need to go in as, as natural, as authentic, and as ready as you can be. And what happens with over prepping is this: you might just get into that interview and stumble on a question that really then stumps you and think, well, hang on a second, that wasn't part of my prep. I didn't prep for this one. And then you really lose your momentum during the interview, because now your focus is on this one question that you didn't prep for. So you've got to, as I keep saying, you've got to find a very, very fine balance. And like Ken said earlier on, and I said it, it is a case of that tell me about yourself question is what is going to create sort of the atmosphere and the tone of your interview. So you go in with a very good impression, having answered that first question right, the chances are the interview is going to go fairly smoothly for you. I hope that helps, Annette.
It does. It does. Thank you so much. So, Mary, thank you. Mary is my buddy, my recruiter friend from Hawaii. I'm always so jealous every time I see you and thinking about that. So, um, Mary, we've been here talking about, Ken is moderating with me today, and my good friend Stella popped by, and I enticed her to come up on the stage with us and join the conversation. And we've been talking about the tell me about yourself question, and then just questions in general, the idea of, candidates prepping in advance so that they're not, rambling when they get into the interview. And so give us your perspective as the recruiter side. What what do you think when people start rambling, or can you tell if it's too practiced? I mean, what do you look for in the interviewee?
Yeah, that's a great question, Annette. It's interesting because just in jumping on here, absolutely you want storytelling, but with authentic details. I mean, we expect the world of people, it seems like. We want it to be authentic, engaging, interesting, but like not too long, right? So that's something that I think candidates constantly are working on and refining, and you find the best examples from your work experiences and life experiences and tailor your story to connect to applicable things that an employer is looking for. And to be honest, it's okay. I mean, I don't advocate for rambling, but I understand if you don't practice enough, you'll never really know what's well received by the person on the other end. And some of the times, practicing with a coach or practicing with a friend or someone who is involved with the interview process helps. But a lot of times, you will not really understand how well it's going to be until you actually put it into practice in an actual interview. So I think on the receiving end, yeah, people, always enjoy hearing the story. I think too, it's when people are not as well rehearsed and they go on about extraneous details or they get off topic, it says to me, that maybe the person is not as skilled from a communication or getting right down to the line of business. And that's, an observation that would be shared most likely with next people in the process and whether or not you will move forward. So I think it's important to really find that balance through practice and through, just working with people that are familiar with interviewing to see if what works and if your story gels. My name's Mary and I'm finished speaking.
Well, thank you so much. You're sounding a little garbled today, so I just want to mention that to you. And I love what you brought up because it's something, although, I would think, and I think we, Ken and Stella would also think, but the idea of not demonstrating good communication skills. And I think that that's something, in every position, communication skills are important. And the idea that, if you go in there and you're just rambling along, that you are just, even whether it's from nerves or just because you haven't planned in advance, that you are showing yourself, or at least demonstrating to others that you don't have solid communication skills. So, I think that's an important point that you brought up. Stella, did you want to jump in there?
I totally agree with everything Mary has said, and I think the worst part is when people actually put in black and white on their CVs or resumes that they have got good communication skills, or as part of their key skills, and they come in and write on that very first question of tell me about yourself. They are either rambling or they're not actually demonstrating the key skills, the good communication skills that they say they have. And that's why I'm always on it with people who put communication skills down as a key skill. You've got to demonstrate this key skills as part of your work experience, but more so when you're coming in to interview. Because again, if you're saying you're having it, we've taken your word for it by by inviting you for the interview. Well, this is your chance to come and demonstrate that. And again, you can't demonstrate that if one, you haven't practiced or you haven't prepped. There are very, very, very few people who can blag their way through through life. And for those ones, good on them. But for the most of us, we do have to take some time to practice and to prepare for job interviews.
That is so true, and you're right. People do so many. Almost everybody that I talk to, says that they're wants to put you know verbal and communication, excellent verbal and communicate and written communication. So on their skills. So yes, you certainly do have to demonstrate that. So if you're in the audience, please do come up and join us on the stage. If you have a question or you just would like to share something that's worked for you during the job interview process. I mean, we all know each other up here, and we could chit chat about this for the rest of this session. But we're really here to try and help people who might be going through the job interview process and could use a little assistance with that. So, talking about job the job interview, I always advocate that people should prep in advance, besides prepping themselves, but to research the company in advance. And I know when I was a recruiter, briefly for just a few years, I used to, and I was contingency, so I was primarily screening potential candidates. And I would always ask at during the call, whether the potential candidate knew anything about the company. And sometimes they would say, "Oh yes, I was working for a publisher." They said, "Oh yes, I read the magazine and I'm so excited and blah blah blah." And then sometimes you'd get somebody that said, "No, no, I don't know anything about it." And I always thought, "Oh my goodness, I mean, if they were, had the skills and seemed, had decent communication skills, etc., I would pass them on. But I know that I also prepped a little sheet that I would send with my findings along with their resume. And if they did talk about, how excited they were and interested in the company and anything they mentioned, I would include that as well. So, what do y'all think about that? Go ahead, Stella. I see you unmiking.
I was flashing desperately here, Annette, because again, this is another thing, a lot of people make the mistake of doing. So, and this includes those who've gone to do a bit of research on the company, right? In terms of going maybe to the website and, coming up with facts, figures to come and regurgitate in the interviews. And again, you don't stand out when you do it. Yes, you've shown me that you've gone to do some research, and believe it or not, I actually know those facts. So again, for you to stand out, especially when you want to demonstrate that you've done some research, the best way of doing this, and this is where LinkedIn becomes a very, very powerful tool in for job seekers looking for work, because they can actually go and engage with a lot of these people straight away. And there's nothing better than you coming in an interview and saying, "Oh yes, I'm connected to this, that, and the other in within the company, and they told me this, that." Do you know how impressive that actually comes across on interview, rather than coming to say, "Yes, I know that your organization had 98% profit last year, that 9 other people before you are going to go and say exactly the same thing." So these are the kind of things, time and time again, I keep saying, you know, what is it you're going to say that is going to make you stand out from the other 9 people who've probably gone before you saying exactly the same thing? Ken said it. What is going to make you memorable from the other 9 people who've gone before you or will go after you? There's got to be something about what it is you said that is just going to inherently be on the mind of the person or the people who have interviewed you. So even doing your research, of organizations and companies, you've got to find new ways of coming back to the interview and using that approach. Again, that shows other skills that you have in terms of then, answering that question as well. So again, I hope that helps as a tip.
I love it. I love it. It's so true. I heard maybe it was you talking about that recently, the idea of starting to connect with people, before you are looking, connecting with people that work even at your target employers, so you start to know people who are, maybe able to help you get into the company. So Mary, as a recruiter, what do you look for when you I'm sure you ask the people that you talk to if they what they know about the company. What is it that you look for that would make someone stand out to you as a recruiter?
So, okay, I hope that I don't sound garbled because I just turned off my AirPods. But if I do, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
much better, much better.
Is that
Yeah.
better? Okay, great. So, I would say, yeah, when I speak with candidates, certainly how they present themselves and if they, yeah, make that memorable impression that others have mentioned is incredibly important. But I mean, to pinpoint exactly what that is with facts on the company or, like, oh, am I impressed by your research? I mean, it doesn't necessarily come across that way. I think prepared and really good candidates, they stand out because they know their experience well enough and they know how it connects to the company. Most people, they're doing the research and the time ahead to know, like, oh, they've been working on certain projects and certain things for a number of years. And my skill set would really work and blend nicely with what they're doing. They can speak to that. They can ask questions like, oh yeah, so whatever happened with this? I know, I remember I was following in the, media, what are you planning to do next? They can speak to the product life cycles and, next steps and prospects a little bit more educated than other people. So, I mean, I'm always just impressed by that. If they happen to show a little bit more business savvy and knowledge about what's going on, because it tells me that, yeah, this is probably someone who really wants to work here. And it's not just, someone being excited because, they got a call to interview somewhere and it's like, it doesn't matter where, I just need a job. So I think having some demonstrated experience that and knowledge come up as, like, say, a follow-up question when they ask you, so what do you have for me, you know showcasing that is always something that makes me sit up and pay a little more attention. I'm Mary and I'm finished speaking.
Yeah, that's so important. The idea of connecting the dots. I think often when people go into a job interview, they don't realize that they have to help the interviewer connect the dots and not depend on the interviewer to do that for them. And so I'm curious, Ken, how do you coach your clients to connect the dots? And then I'd like to hear from Stella as well, as the connecting of the dots.
Well, a couple things. First, if I could maybe add a little levity into this, I was doing some college recruiting back in the day, and this student walked in, and he was just like beautifully dressed, handsome guy, like just looked great, speaking communication skills. And I asked them, tell me about yourself, because I use that as a warm up. Like always thought as a kind of softball. And the first thing he said to me was, well, basically, I'm an underachiever. I could do a lot better in school, but I really don't put my mind to it that much. And it took all I could to not laugh right out loud. I thought, wow, I guess he's being honest, but that's the case of being too honest. And it certainly was memorable, that's for sure, but not in the right way.
Oh my
But
goodness! So it wasn't like a something he flipped on you. That was really his answer.
that was his answer. That was it. About a minute or two in, he said something else. I said, look, I got to stop this interview. Let me give you you're not getting the job, but let me give you some advice, which probably wasn't, well, he was a student. I thought he could use it. And it just didn't go much further than that. But to your question, Annette, I work with my clients on what I call the 3 Ps. The first one is preparation. You need to prepare. You need to do your research on the company, the marketplace, competition, everything you can find out. The interviewer, if you have their name, you certainly can find out information about that. And it's not necessarily that you're going to flaunt it, but I do think if you could work it in to the conversation, like, when I was doing research on the company, here's what I found. And that might lead to a good question, an in-depth question. And to me, it shows initiative. It shows, if you don't do your research, it's kind of lazy. And it shows, I think it was Mary who said that you really want the job because you put some effort into preparing. The second P for me is process. And this also gets to something you said, Annette. And I'm a big believer in the STARS process. And I say STARS with an S on purpose. I think most people know STARS is an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, result. And for me, the last S is, so why am I telling you this? And I think I love STARS because A, it allows you to tell a story. And stories are compelling, they're interesting, they're memorable. And B, it kind of puts a little box around your story so you don't ramble on. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that end of, so why am I telling you this? For me, I suggest to my clients that they paint the picture of themselves in that role. Make it easy for the interviewer to see them in the job. And also, don't leave it your answer to interpretation. Tell the interviewer, this is why I told you that. The reason I gave you that story is because in this role, I know you need someone who's going to be able to look at a situation, identify the problem, and come up with a solution. And I think I've done that throughout my career. That's why I just gave you that example there. So those are a couple thoughts for you. And the other last P, by the way, is practice, and practice out loud. I always say, don't let the first time the words come out of your mouth be in that interview. You want to, I personally tell my, coach my clients to write them down, type them out, read them over, get comfortable with it to the point where it becomes conversational. You never want to sound like you're reading a speech or a prepared statement, but the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get, the more conversation you'll get. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll get. And confidence reduces the stress that comes with any interview that you're going on. I'll stop for now.
Well, I really like that phrase. Don't let the words that are coming out of the words in the interview be coming out of your mouth the first time. I think I might borrow that phrase. I like it a lot. So, Stella, I'm sure you have a take on that as well.
Absolutely. And I think, what Mary and Ken are saying are, I couldn't agree more. I think, Mary, what I was coming up with in terms of, research and people coming up to interview are those who are just coming up with facts. And again, it does them a sort of disservice in terms of just coming up with facts at interview. But like you said, if you can combine it with what value you can then bring to the organization, then that is absolutely amazing. So even if it's a case of you read that they've done X% profit, well, guess what? I'm the one who can then increase it by, another X amount of profit. And this is what I'm going to do, if I was to come to your organization. That is what is going to really make you stand out, rather than you having done research and literally you're now coming in with 10 facts about the organization. So that's from that angle, I was talking about in terms of, doing your research. I think on the whole, it's always important that you do research of the organization. If you can, if you are on LinkedIn, really go and connect. Again, this is why people give you time before they invite you for an interview. They're giving you that time to prep for the interview, and part of your prep is to find out relevant information that is going to make you ready for the job interview. Anybody giving you a job interview in the moment, sometimes it's rare. For the most part, they will give you a bit of time, because it just gives you that time to go and do proper research on the organization, find out some key things, and of course, gets you to prepare, like Ken said, with all the P's, and be ready for the actual interview on on the day.
Oh my goodness. I thank you so much all. I'm picking up some great ideas that I can actually share with my clients as well. And please, if you're in the audience, do follow the people on the stage. They are all just smart and experts in this area. I'm so excited and happy that I have them with me. As I see you in the audience, if you have a question, please do come up and join us on stage. We have time for a couple of quick questions. If not, we will just continue our discussion up here ourselves. So, what about, I think the tell me about yourself is a big stumbling block for a lot of the interviewers, that they just don't know what they should be saying. But what about also, I think another stumbling time is at the end of the interview. So I'm just curious if you have any suggestions for the end of the interview, and then I will pass the mic over to Rob for his question or comment.
Well, I'll jump in. Typically I like it when candidates ask. So, I mean, there's versions of this out there, but like I think when they ask things like, so what kind of things will this role directly be involved with right away? Like, Are they going to own a certain project? Are they going to be really involved with a certain initiative? Can you just tell me more what that looks like? I really like questions about how are they going to make an impact in that department, at the company, more so than like, how soon can I get promoted, or stuff like that. I hate it when people just like get to the future like, oh, you already want to be out of this job. So whenever people have specific questions and curiosity about, how can they make their impact, and how the team is set up, and just other players on it, I think that's always a good sign, and it creates a good impression. I'm Mary, and I'm finished speaking.
Great. Thank you so much. Something really strange is happening every time I go to look in the back channel. When I try to come back in, it says that I have to come into the room again. Stella, did you want to add something before I pass over to Rob?
Yeah, I think, again, just as much as creating a good first impression, you want to create a lasting impression. And again, these are the kind of things that you need to remember. When we're talking in rooms like this, and especially to job seekers, or, people prepping for interviews, it can become so overwhelming with all the informations of the do's and don'ts of interviews. But it has to come from a place of, Ken, myself, you, Annette, Mary, really giving you information because we are in the know. We kind of know what is going on in that space. So yes, it's quite overwhelming with the information and the tips that we're sharing, but for the most part, adapt them and it does work. So, for me, in terms of lasting impressions, or sort of like the last things you are going to be talking about, is often just reminding the interviewer, that you are the person for the job. Now, how do you do that? One thing you don't want to do is come across as a threat. And when I mean a threat, I mean a threat to the person actually interviewing you. I've heard quite a lot of people, and when I say I've heard a lot of people, I've sat in a lot of interviews myself, just to get some background information when we are teaching employability skills. But there's nothing worse than a candidate saying, "Oh, I want your job," to the person who's
Oh, yeah.
interviewing you. And again, I hear it time and time again. And in the way it is said and the way it comes across are two different things. So these are the kind of things that you really need to think about. And just as much as you're preparing and you're doing research on the organization, you must have some good questions to ask right at the end of an interview. Again, when people, that's going to be one of the last things that you get at an interview. Have you got any questions? And you must have at least one or two good questions to have. And then, the very, very last thing before you actually leave the room, and even when you've asked all the important questions, and again, it depends on how the interview has gone. You get some interviews where it's so formal. You get other interviews where it's so informal. So again, you've got to be able to read the room in terms of the very last thing it is you need to say at interview. So there's sometimes, there are a few things that you could say at the very end of an informal interview that I wouldn't necessarily advise you to say at the end of a very formal interview. So, I hope that kind of like clears things up again in terms of creating that good, lasting impression.
Thank you so much for adding that. And I hear what you're saying. I think sometimes people, if the interviewer says, where do you want to be in 5 years, they say, oh, I want to have your job, and they think that it will make them sound like they're, sort of a go-getter and proactive. But I can see how that might rather threatening to the interviewer. We're getting sort of close to the end, and I'd like please again do follow these very smart people up here. But I would like to go around and we'll start with Ken, and then Stella, and then Mary. Just let people know, first of all, are you open to connecting on LinkedIn, and where they can find you?
And thank you, and thanks for having me. This has been a very fun conversation. And you could find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. You could find my link in my profile here. You could reach out directly to me at ken@shercoaching.com. And I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to give a 30-minute consult with you. I won't charge you, and I won't give you the big sell either. I'll just help you in any way that I can. So if you're interested in that, again, please reach out to me at ken@shercoaching.com. And thank you again, Annette, for having me. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Annette. And again, it's been lovely being on stage with you, Ken, and with Mary. As I said earlier on, I'm all about, sharing good practice. For me, it's always important to listen to people so I can feed back to learners so they don't think I'm making things up when I'm talking to them about employability skills. It's always good to hear it from a recruiter's perspective, from hiring managers' perspectives, in terms of making sure that the right information is given to job seekers and to people I deliver employability skills training to. For me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I That really is my platform of choice. I often share tips. I put out content. I love engaging with people. So that's where you can find me. Over to you, Mary.
Thanks, Stella. Yeah, thanks, Annette, for having the room. Yeah, I too like connecting with people on LinkedIn, so certainly feel free to reach out. My last name is Despe, D as in David, ESPE. Um, as far as where you can find me, these days I've been consulting with Deloitte. I'm hiring for their digital practice. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to connect and look at opportunities. I do speak on various career topics and things of that nature. My next talk is on March 9th for Agile Charleston, talking about strategies you can apply if you're looking to do a career pivot. Happy to share the link for that. I'm sorry, I don't think I put it in my profile, but happy to share that with people if they reach out, and we can connect like that. But thanks so much.
Awesome, awesome. So I will. I'm Annette Richmond, and you can find me certainly on LinkedIn. You can find me here in the Smarter Career Moves Clubhouse, and I do LinkedIn Lives every Thursday at 11 a.m. I'm excited that Stella is my guest next week. I'm just chomping at the bit to spend that whole 45 minutes talking to her. So, thank you, and please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you to everyone who's been here. We have a couple of people who've been here with us right from the beginning, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us. So thanks again to my co-mods, and thank you, Stella, for dropping by. So appreciate you.